When I was buying a birthday present for my daughter, the cashier suddenly grabbed my arm and whispered, "Under no circumstances should you go to that party." I thought he was crazy and brushed it off after all. It was a family celebration. What betrayal could possibly be waiting there? You won't believe what happened next. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and write in the comments what time it is where you are now. The young man, whose name tag read Paul, released my arm, his eyes still holding a desperate urgency. I simply nodded, signed the credit card slip for an amount that made my hand tremble slightly, and took the elegantly wrapped jewelry box. As the bell above the door chimed my exit onto the bustling Boston street, his warning echoed in my mind, a discordant note in a day I had filled with fragile hope. The box felt heavy in my hand, a tangible symbol of a reconciliation that had begun just 24 hours earlier, with a sound I hadn't heard in 2 years, a message from my daughter. It had happened yesterday afternoon. The book on architectural theory slipped from my fingers, hitting the polished hardwood floor of my apartment with a dull thud. I'd been reading the same paragraph for the third time anyway, my mind drifting to the gray expanse of the Charles River, visible from my 47th floor window. The phone buzzed again. My heart, a tired old engine, stuttered. The screen lit up with a name I had meticulously avoided looking at for 2 years, 3 months, and 16 days. Not that I was counting. Eleanor. With hands that suddenly felt ancient, I opened the message. "Dad, I know a lot has happened between us, but it's my 38th birthday this Saturday at 7 p.m. I'd love for you to come. Address, 425 Oak Street, Newton. Love you, Eleanor." I read it twice, then a third time. "Love you, Eleanor." The words blurred. Our last conversation had been a storm of sharp accusations and wounded pride. "You don't understand, Dad," she had yelled, her voice raw. "Ryan's startup collapsed. We're drowning, and you're sitting on Mom's life insurance money like it's some sacred treasure." "Your mother wanted that money for emergencies," I had retorted, my own voice colder than I intended. "Not to bail out your husband's reckless decisions. Mom would want to help family, but you've always been selfish, burying yourself in your blueprints and buildings." The conversation had ended with a slammed door and the deafening silence that followed. Now, this. An invitation. I stood and paced the length of my quiet apartment, the ghosts of my family watching from their silver frames. My late wife, Margaret, on our wedding day. Eleanor at 8, gap-toothed and beaming at her first piano recital. Her wedding day, when I had still believed Ryan was good enough for her. My eyes landed on the photo of that little girl in a blue dress. The girl who used to run to me for everything. My finger hovered over the screen, caught between the hope of a father and the cynicism of a man who had learned that love could be used as a weapon. What had truly prompted her to break 2 years of silence? Before I could allow hope to take root, I needed an anchor to reality. There was only one person left who had known Margaret and me for 40 years, who understood the complex tapestry of our family. I found Evelyn's number in my contacts and pressed the call button before I could change my mind. She answered on the second ring, her voice as warm and familiar as a well-worn armchair. "Walter, what a surprise. Is everything all right?" "I'm fine, Evelyn," I began, the words feeling clumsy. "Something has happened. I received a message from Eleanor." There was a brief silence on the other end of the line, loaded with years of shared history. Evelyn had been Margaret's closest confidant, a silent witness to our family's joys and sorrows. She knew all about the fight, about the 2 years of silence. "Oh," she finally said, her tone cautious. What did she want? I explained the invitation, the sudden request for my presence at her 38th birthday party. I tried to keep my voice even, to present the facts as an architect would, laying out the blueprints of the situation. But I couldn't stop the tremor of hope from seeping in. She ended it with, "Love you, Evelyn." She hasn't said that to me in years. "Walter, be careful." Evelyn's voice was gentle but firm. "I heard through the grapevine that Ryan's latest business venture completely fell through about 6 months ago. They're in financial trouble. And, well, everyone knows about your lottery win." Her words landed like cold stones in my stomach, confirming the very fears I was trying to suppress. Of course, it was about the money. What else could it be? Yet, The image of that little girl in the blue dress, my Eleanor, fought against the cynical conclusion. "She's still my daughter, Evelyn," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "What if I'm wrong? What if this is her one true attempt to reach out? If I don't go, I might lose her forever. And if you go, and you're right about the money," she countered softly, "the hurt will be even worse." We spoke for a few more minutes, but my mind was made up. Evelyn was the voice of reason, but a father's heart doesn't always listen to reason. It listens for the echo of a child's laughter. It hopes for redemption. "I have to go," I said finally, the decision solidifying in my chest. "I have to know for sure." After we said our goodbyes, I sat in the quiet of my apartment, the city lights beginning to glitter outside my window. Evelyn had given me the truth I already knew, but she had also given me clarity. I was walking into this with my eyes open. I would not be a fool, but I would be a father. With a newfound resolve, I picked up my phone, opened the message from Eleanor, and began to type my reply. Words were not enough to bridge a 2-year silence. An action was required. A gesture. I spent the next morning, the day of the party, walking through the historic streets of Boston, my mind set on a single purpose: finding the perfect gift for Eleanor. It had to be more than a simple birthday present. It needed to be a statement, a tangible piece of my hope, an olive branch crafted from something precious. I wanted it to say everything I couldn't: that I was sorry, that I missed her, that I wanted my daughter back. My feet eventually led me to Newbury Street, where the city's most exclusive boutiques sat nestled in elegant brownstone buildings. I passed windows displaying designer handbags and bespoke suits until I stopped before a jewelry store. Its window featured a single magnificent diamond necklace resting on a black velvet bust, illuminated by a soft spotlight. It felt right. Eleanor, even as a little girl playing dress-up with Margaret's costume jewelry, had always loved things that sparkled. Inside, the air was hushed and smelled faintly of lavender and wealth. A polite saleswoman guided me to the glass countertops, where diamonds lay scattered on velvet trays like fallen stars. My eyes scanned over bracelets and rings, but nothing felt quite right until I saw them: a pair of diamond stud earrings. They were elegant and understated, a brilliant cut diamond at the center surrounded by a delicate halo of smaller stones. They weren't ostentatious, but they possessed a timeless quality, a quiet confidence. They were perfect for the woman Eleanor had become. "An excellent choice, sir," the saleswoman said, sensing my interest. "The setting is platinum, a classic design for a milestone birthday." I imagined Eleanor opening the box, her eyes widening in surprise. I pictured the diamonds catching the light as she smiled a genuine smile, not the strained one from our last argument. This gift could be the key, the first step in rebuilding the bridge between us. The price was extravagant, more than I had spent on a single item in years, but the cost felt insignificant compared to what I hoped to gain. It was an investment in a future I desperately wanted back. "I'll take them," I said, my voice firm. She carefully placed the earrings into an elegant navy box lined with white silk. As I took the beautifully packaged gift, it felt heavier than its physical weight. It was the weight of 2 years of unspoken words, of regrets, of a father's relentless hope. With the box secure in my coat pocket, I walked towards the cash register at the front of the store, a feeling of cautious optimism warming my chest. The man at the cash register looked tired. He was middle-aged, with graying hair and the weary posture of someone who had been standing on his feet for too long. His name tag, pinned crookedly to his blazer, read Paul. He offered a practiced, impersonal smile as I approached. "Find everything you needed, sir?" he asked, his voice flat. "Yes, these earrings," I said, placing the elegant navy box on the cool marble countertop. I felt a surge of fatherly pride. "They're a birthday gift for my daughter. She turns 38 today." Paul nodded absently, his attention on scanning the barcode. "That'll be $3,700, with tax." He paused as I handed him my credit card, his eyes briefly glancing at the embossed silver letters. Walter A. Vance. Something shifted in his expression. The professional mask slipped, replaced by a look of sudden, sharp recognition. His hands, which had been moving with rote efficiency, stilled. When he looked up at me again, his eyes held an unnerving intensity. The air in the quiet store suddenly felt thick with unspoken tension. "Listen, sir." His voice dropped to a low, urgent whisper as he leaned slightly over the counter. "Walter Vance, right? From the city?" I blinked, taken aback by the sudden familiarity. "Yes. How did you—" He ignored my question, his grip tightening on my credit card. Suddenly, his other hand shot out and grabbed my wrist. His fingers were surprisingly strong, calloused in a way that didn't fit the polished environment of the store. "Please," he said, his eyes darting around nervously. "Trust me, don't go to that party." "Excuse me?" I tried to pull my arm back, but his grip was firm. A cold knot of alarm formed in my stomach. "Let go of me. What are you talking about?" "I'm not crazy," he insisted, his whisper growing more desperate. "There's something you need to know. Whatever they've told you, whatever they've promised, it's not what it seems." I yanked my arm free, my heart hammering against my ribs. Other customers were beginning to stare. "Just complete the transaction," I ordered, my voice carrying the sharp authority I'd once used in boardrooms. With trembling fingers, he ran my card through the machine. As he handed it back, he held on for an extra second, his eyes pleading. "Please, just stay home tonight." I snatched the card and the gift box from the counter. "Thank you for your concern," I said stiffly, backing away towards the door. "But I think you've mistaken me for someone else." "I haven't," he called after me, his voice now a strained, desperate cry that turned every head in the store. "Walter Vance. I know exactly who you are." The heavy glass door couldn't close fast enough, and I strode quickly into the street, the strange encounter leaving me feeling exposed and deeply unsettled. The drive from downtown Boston to the leafy suburbs of Newton was usually a pleasant one, a gradual transition from the city's steel and glass canyons to the quiet dignity of historic homes. But tonight, my mind was a tempest. Paul's desperate face was superimposed over the passing scenery, his words echoing with every hum of the tires on the pavement. "It's not what it seems." I gripped the steering wheel, my knuckles white. It was madness. How could a random store clerk possibly know anything about my family? About Eleanor's party? My logical, architect's mind raced to find rational explanations. Perhaps he was a former employee of Ryan's failed startup, a disgruntled man with a grudge. Or maybe he was simply mentally unstable, latching onto a name he saw on a credit card. Each explanation seemed plausible, yet none could fully erase the genuine fear I had seen in his eyes. To distract myself, I turned on the car's stereo. A soft piano melody filled the car. Chopin, the same composer Eleanor had so diligently practiced for her first recital all those years ago. The music, meant to soothe, only sharpened the ache in my chest. Was I a fool for proceeding? Was my hope for reconciliation blinding me to a clear and present danger? I thought of Evelyn's warning, now amplified by Paul's. Two separate people, both urging caution. But then, I pictured Eleanor's face as a child, her complete and utter trust in me. I remembered her text message, the simple, powerful words. "Love you, Eleanor." I had to believe in that. To turn back now, to succumb to the paranoid fantasies of a stranger, would be to give up on my daughter entirely. It was a risk I had to take. As I turned onto Oak Street in Newton, the houses grew larger, set back from the road behind manicured lawns and ancient oak trees. Warm light spilled from their windows, painting idyllic scenes of family life. It was a world away from the cold anonymity of my downtown apartment. And there it was, number 425. A beautiful colonial revival, every window glowing with a welcoming light. I could hear the faint murmur of music and laughter drifting through the crisp autumn air. It looked exactly like the happy home I had always wanted for her. Parking across the street, I took a moment to compose myself, the jewelry box resting on the passenger seat beside me. The scene before me was one of perfect domestic bliss. It was the complete opposite of the dark, treacherous trap Paul's warning had implied. He had to be wrong. He just had to be. Taking a deep, steadying breath, I grabbed the gift box and stepped out of the car. I raised my hand to the polished brass doorbell, feeling the weight of the last 2 years in that single, suspended moment. Before my knuckle could even touch the button, the heavy oak door swung open. Eleanor stood there, framed in the warm light from within, her face transforming from surprise to what appeared to be genuine, unadulterated delight. "Dad, I'm so glad you came." She didn't hesitate, stepping forward and wrapping me in an embrace that felt both familiar and strangely new after so much time apart. Her perfume was sophisticated, a blend of jasmine and something warm, like vanilla. It was the scent of a woman, not the fruity body sprays of the teenager I remembered. "Happy birthday, sweetheart," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "You look wonderful." And she did. She had Margaret's elegance, wearing a simple black dress that was both classy and understated. "Thank you for coming," she whispered, her voice holding a slight tremor. "I know it's been difficult, but I'm really hoping we can move forward." She led me inside, where the happy murmur of conversation and soft jazz filled the air. Ryan appeared at her side, his smile broad and welcoming. "Walter, it's great to see you. Thanks for coming. It means the world to Eleanor." His handshake was firm, his eye contact steady. He seemed like the polished, successful man I had once thought he was. Before I could fully respond, two small figures darted across the room. "Grandpa's here!" The boy, who must have been Leo, had Eleanor's serious eyes, while the little girl, Sophia, had a gap-toothed grin that was a perfect echo of her mother's at that age. She thrust a crayon drawing into my hands. "I drew your house by the water, Grandpa." My heart swelled, pushing aside the last remnants of Paul's warning. This was real. The warmth, the smiles, the innocent joy of my grandchildren, no one could fake this. Sophia grabbed my free hand, her small fingers warm and trusting. "Will you read me a story later? I have a new book about dragons." The evening unfolded with an ease I hadn't dared to imagine. Guests greeted me warmly, friends of Eleanor and Ryan who seemed to know all about me. I felt a sense of belonging that had been absent from my life for too long. This was what I had been missing. This was home. An hour into the party, I found myself completely at ease, laughing at a story one of Eleanor's colleagues was telling. The wine was excellent, the food was delicious, and for the first time in 2 years, I didn't feel like an architect surveying the ruins of his own life. I felt like a father, a grandfather. I felt whole. At a lull in the conversation, Eleanor gracefully clinked a glass with a spoon, drawing the room to a quiet, expectant hush. "I just want to thank everyone for coming tonight," she said, her eyes shining. "But most of all, I want to thank my dad for being here. It means more to me than words can say." Her gaze met mine across the room, and in that moment, all I saw was the sincere, loving daughter I had raised. "And I believe you have something for me, Dad," she added, a playful, happy smile on her face. The moment felt both theatrical and deeply intimate. All eyes were on me as I stood and walked toward her, the small navy box in my hand. The room was silent except for the soft jazz music playing in the background. This was it, the moment of true reconciliation. Her hands shook slightly as she took the box. She carefully untied the ribbon and lifted the lid. A collective gasp went through the room as the diamonds caught the light. Eleanor's eyes widened and then filled with what looked like genuine tears. "Dad, they're the most beautiful things I've ever seen," she whispered, her voice catching. She immediately unclasped the simple pearls she was wearing and fastened the new earrings, turning her head from side to side. The diamonds sparkled against her dark hair, and she looked radiant. "Thank you." She stepped forward and gave me another hug, this one tight and heartfelt. The guests erupted in applause and murmurs of admiration. What a thoughtful father! Such exquisite taste! Their words washed over me like a warm tide, validating my decision, my hope, and my investment. I had done the right thing. My daughter was happy. Our family was healing. As Eleanor went to show her friends her new gift, I found a quiet corner, my heart full to bursting. All the suspicion, all the warnings from Evelyn and the strange man in the store, it all seemed so foolish now. This was real. This joy was real. Feeling pleasantly warm from the wine and the overwhelming emotion, I set my empty glass down. A glass of water was what I needed to clear my head before I embarrassed myself by crying in front of everyone. Making my way toward the back of the house, I followed the sound of the refrigerator's gentle hum. The kitchen was a pristine expanse of granite countertops and gleaming stainless steel appliances. It was modern, expensive, and impersonal, nothing like the warm, cluttered kitchen Margaret had kept, which had always smelled of cinnamon and fresh coffee. I found a set of glasses in a neat row beside the sink and reached for one, my mind already planning my return to the living room where Sophia had promised to show me her dragon book. That's when I heard it. Voices drifted through the open French doors that led to the stone terrace. It was Ryan's voice, louder than the others, slightly slurred from the beer I'd seen him drinking earlier. He was talking to another man, their words cutting through the night air. The old man doesn't even suspect, Ryan boasted, followed by a low chuckle. $2 million, guys. Eleanor already has the family fund documents prepared. My hand froze on the faucet. The water glass trembled in my grip. It felt as if the floor had dropped out from under me, leaving me in a free fall. It had to be a joke. A sick, tasteless joke. And he'll sign? The other man asked. Of course he'll sign. Ryan's voice was slick with cruel amusement. He's so pathetically grateful for this reconciliation he'd sign anything. Thinks he's securing his grandkids' future. He laughed again, a sound that curdled my blood. The stupid old fool actually bought her expensive jewelry. Makes this even easier. Proves he's emotionally invested. The words struck me with the physical force of a blow. Stupid old fool. The kindness, the warm welcome, the tears in my daughter's eyes, all of it was a performance. An elaborate, perfectly executed play designed to manipulate a lonely old man's heart. My fingers went numb. The glass slipped from my grasp, shattering against the granite sink in an explosion of crystal fragments that seemed to echo the sudden, violent breaking of my own trust. The sound was sharp and loud in the quiet kitchen, but the men outside, lost in their triumphant scheming, didn't seem to notice. I stood paralyzed, the pieces of broken glass at my feet like the glittering, sharp-edged fragments of my shattered hope. For a long moment I didn't move. The world seemed to narrow to the glittering fragments of glass on the floor and the sound of my own blood roaring in my ears. The warmth of the party, the joyful laughter, the soft jazz music, it all felt like a distant, cruel echo from another lifetime. Every memory from the evening replayed in my mind, now tainted by the ugly truth. Eleanor's tears, Sophia's crayon drawing, Ryan's firm handshake. It was all a lie. A meticulously crafted performance for an audience of one. A cold fury, unlike anything I had ever felt, began to rise from the depths of my shock. It was a clean, sharp anger that burned away the fog of hurt and despair. They had mistaken my love for weakness. They had mistaken my hope for foolishness. That was a grave miscalculation. I was Walter Vance. I had spent 40 years designing buildings, structures that required precision, foresight, and an unshakable understanding of stress points and breaking points. They had just shown me theirs. My movements became deliberate, precise. I bent down, carefully picking up the largest shards of glass and placing them in the sink, my hands steady. I used a paper towel to wipe the spilled water from the floor. My breathing evened out. The frantic hammering in my chest subsided, replaced by a cold, calm resolve. They wanted a performance? I would give them one. I walked out of the kitchen, my posture erect, my expression a carefully constructed mask of pleasant neutrality. The party was still in full swing. A few guests smiled and nodded as I passed, and I nodded back, the gesture feeling alien, as if I were a puppet controlled by a stranger. I saw my grandchildren playing by the fireplace, their innocence now looking like another layer of the elaborate deception. Then I saw Eleanor. She was watching me from across the room, her smile bright and expectant. When our eyes met, she disengaged from her conversation and began walking towards me. The final act was about to begin. She had no idea the lead actor had just read a completely different script. "Dad, there you are," Eleanor said, her voice bright with a calculated enthusiasm that now sounded horribly false to my ears. She glided to my side, holding a sleek leather folder. "I wanted to talk to you about an idea I've been developing. Something for the family." She perched on the edge of the coffee table, leaning forward with the practiced body language of a skilled salesperson about to close a deal. The diamond earrings I had given her, those expensive symbols of my hope, caught the light as she tilted her head, now revealed as mere props in her cruel performance. "It's a family investment fund," she began, opening the folder to reveal official-looking documents, complete with professional letterhead and dense legal terminology. For Leo and Sophia, to secure their education, their future. With your lottery winnings, we could establish something truly meaningful for them, Dad. Something that lasts for generations. The papers looked legitimate. They had clearly spent a great deal of time and money preparing this fraud. How many hours had they spent planning the perfect way to steal from the man who had given them everything? I accepted the documents, my hands remaining perfectly steady despite the volcanic fury roaring beneath my calm exterior. This looks comprehensive, I said, my voice even, and curious. I pretended to scan the legal text, noting how her posture shifted slightly, sensing success was within reach. I wanted everything to be perfect for the family, she replied, and the irony of her words almost broke my composure. You've obviously put considerable effort into this, I continued, handing the folder back to her. This is a significant decision. It deserves proper consideration. I paused, then looked at her directly. Could I have a few minutes to think this over in private? Perhaps somewhere quieter, upstairs? Her face lit up with a triumphant smile, one she tried but failed to completely conceal. Of course, Dad. Take all the time you need. The guest bathroom is at the top of the stairs, second door on the right. She believed she had won. She had no idea the game was already over. The upstairs hallway was quiet, the plush carpet muffling my footsteps. Below, the sounds of the party provided the perfect cover for my true purpose. I located the guest bathroom, a lavish space of marble and polished chrome, another testament to a lifestyle built on a foundation of lies. I closed the heavy door behind me and turned the lock. The click was sharp and final, a sound of decision. For a moment I leaned against the door, my reflection a pale, grim face in the large mirror. The rage was still there, a cold, hard knot in my chest, but my mind was perfectly clear, operating with the detached precision of an architect finalizing a blueprint. They had left no room for error in their plan, and neither would I. On the granite vanity, beside a row of expensive hand soaps and monogrammed towels, sat a small notepad and a fountain pen, likely for guests to leave charming notes. The irony was bitter. I tore off a sheet. My first instinct was to write a torrent of angry, wounded words, to lay bare the depths of their betrayal. But that would give them the satisfaction of knowing they had broken me. No, this required not the heat of passion, but the cold finality of a legal decree. My hand was steady as I began to write. The words came easily, each one a carefully placed stone in the wall I was building between myself and them forever. Eleanor, I wrote, thank you for the wonderful evening. Your performance was truly convincing. Unfortunately, I overheard Ryan on the terrace discussing his plans for the stupid old fool and his $2 million. I paused, letting the ink dry. The next sentence would be the one to shatter their world. As of tomorrow morning, I will be meeting with my lawyer. My will is being changed. Every last cent will be placed in a trust for charities that support orphaned children. Perhaps they will prove more grateful than my own blood. I signed it simply, Walter. I read it over once. It was perfect. It was cold, precise, and devastating. It informed them that I knew. It detailed the consequences, and it offered a final, cutting judgment on their character. I folded the note with sharp, deliberate creases. This small piece of paper was now the most powerful thing in the house. It was not just a note. It was a verdict. I unlocked the bathroom door, the sound barely audible over the party downstairs, and slipped back into the hallway. My heart was a steady, rhythmic drum, no longer frantic with shock, but beating with the calm certainty of purpose. I moved down the grand staircase, not as a guest, but as a ghost, my steps light on the thick runner. From the bottom of the stairs, I could see the living room. Eleanor was the center of a laughing group, the diamond earrings sparkling as she gestured animatedly. She glanced towards the stairs, a flicker of impatience in her eyes. The predator was waiting for its prey to return. My path was clear. I needed to place the note and leave without speaking to a single person. I moved through the periphery of the room, using the flow of guests as cover. I retrieved my coat from the hall closet, draping it over my arm as if I were merely stepping outside for a breath of fresh air. No one paid me any mind. I was just an old man in a suit, invisible. The leather folder Eleanor had given me was still on the coffee table. With a final casual glance to ensure she was still distracted, I walked over to the table. In one smooth, practiced motion, I placed the folded note directly on top of the folder. It sat there, a small white rectangle of devastation, waiting to be discovered. Then I turned and walked to the front door. I didn't rush. My movements were calm, unhurried. I opened the heavy door, stepped out into the cool night air, and closed it gently behind me. The latch clicked shut, the sound punctuating the end of my life as Eleanor's father. I walked down the stone path to my car, started the engine without a roar, and pulled away from the curb at exactly the speed limit. In my rearview mirror, the house was still a perfect picture of warmth and celebration. But I knew the truth. I had just left a bomb in the middle of that perfect picture, and the fuse was burning. Soon the facade would crumble into chaos. The city lights of Boston grew brighter as I left the quiet, tree-lined streets of Newton behind me. I drove mechanically, my mind a calm, empty space after the storm of the evening. I had done what needed to be done. There were no regrets, only a profound and hollow sadness for the daughter I had lost tonight, perhaps had already lost 2 years ago. Then the phone, resting on the passenger seat, lit up and began to vibrate. Eleanor's name glowed on the screen. I ignored it. A minute later, it rang again. And again, the frantic, desperate calls of a conspirator whose perfect plan had just spectacularly imploded. I could picture the scene, the dropped smiles, the frantic whispers, Ryan's drunken rage, and Eleanor's panicked disbelief as she read my note. They were likely calling to demand, to plead, to lie some more, but I was done listening to lies. I let the phone ring until it fell silent. Then I muted it completely. The silence in the car was a comfort. As I crossed the bridge over the Charles River, the familiar skyline of my city rising before me, I knew I couldn't go back to my empty apartment. Not yet. The quiet rooms would feel too much like a tomb tonight. There was only one place to go, one person I needed to see. The man in the jewelry store, Paul. He had tried to warn me. In a world where my own daughter had seen me as a mark, a stranger had seen me as a human being and tried to protect me. It was an act of decency, so profound it almost felt unbelievable. I owed him an explanation. I owed him my thanks. Instead of taking the exit towards my apartment building, I stayed on the highway, heading back towards the glittering lights of Newbury Street. I didn't know if the store would still be open, or if Paul would even be there. But I had to try. For the first time all night, I wasn't reacting to betrayal or planning revenge. I was making a choice, a conscious move towards an unexpected and genuine human connection. Treasured Moments stayed open late on Saturdays, its windows casting a warm, inviting glow onto the darkening street. I found Paul near the back of the store, organizing inventory on a clipboard. He looked up as I entered, his expression shifting from mild surprise to genuine concern when he recognized me. "You were right," I said, walking directly to the counter. There was no need for preamble. I came back to thank you and to apologize for not listening. A wave of relief washed over his weary features. He set his clipboard down on the marble countertop. "What happened? Are you all right?" "I'm all right," I assured him. "Thanks to you. I overheard their plan, the family fund, the $2 million, all of it." He shook his head, a sad, knowing look in his eyes. "I heard Ryan bragging about it at a bar last week," he explained, his voice low. "He was drunk, telling his friends how easy it would be to fool his rich father-in-law. He mentioned the lottery win, the estrangement, the whole pathetic story. I didn't know who you were until I saw your name on the credit card. I just couldn't let it happen." His simple, honest explanation struck me more profoundly than any grand gesture could have. This man, a stranger, had risked his job and a potentially ugly confrontation simply to do the right thing. "Why?" I asked, genuinely needing to understand. "Why would you do that for someone you don't know?" He paused, leaning against the counter. "A few years ago, I lost everything," he said, his gaze distant. "My business partner, a man I trusted like a brother, embezzled all the funds and disappeared. I know what it feels like to be betrayed for money by someone you trust. It's a unique kind of pain. I couldn't stand by and watch it happen to someone else if I could stop it." His story, told without self-pity, resonated with the fresh wound in my own heart. Here was a man who had been broken by the same greed that had poisoned my own family, yet he had chosen decency over cynicism. He had chosen kindness. In that quiet, empty store, two strangers found a moment of profound, unspoken understanding, a shared acknowledgement of the harsh lessons the world can teach. "Well, Paul," I said, a genuine smile forming on my face for the first time all evening. "It seems I owe you more than just my thanks." I extended my hand across the counter. "How about coffee tomorrow morning? It's the least I can do. It feels increasingly rare to find an honest man in this city." Paul's tired face broke into a warm, sincere smile as he took my hand. His handshake was firm, the grip of a man who, despite his losses, had held on to his integrity. "I'd like that very much, Walter," he replied. "And for what it's worth, I'm sorry about your daughter. That kind of betrayal, it changes things." "It does," I agreed, releasing his hand. "It clarifies things." We exchanged numbers, and I promised to text him the address of a small cafe near my building. As I walked out of the store for the second time that night, the bell chiming my departure, the feeling was entirely different. The city air no longer felt cold and hostile, but fresh and full of possibility. Driving home through the glittering Chicago night, no, Boston night, I finally glanced at my phone. 15 missed calls from Eleanor. Several long, rambling text messages, likely a cocktail of disbelief, rage, and feigned remorse. I didn't read them. I simply powered the phone off and placed it in the glove compartment. That chapter of my life was over. Tonight had cost me a daughter, a loss I would mourn in my own time. But it had also given me something unexpected, and perhaps more valuable, proof that decency and honor still existed, and the beginning of a genuine friendship based not on obligation or necessity, but on mutual respect. As I pulled into my parking garage, the silence of my car was no longer the sound of loneliness, but the sound of peace. Tomorrow, I would call my lawyer. I would set up the trust for orphaned children. And then, I would go have coffee with my new friend. For the first time in a very long time, I felt genuinely optimistic about what the future held. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching.